Hi, and welcome today to the EI Dynamics training series on report automation basics. So the objective today is we're going to teach fundamental mechanics of automating a report in EI Dynamics. And at the end of the training session, you should be able to create a job that will automatically generate a report and send it off as an attachment within an email. The scenario that we're going to work with is ABC Company wants to automatically send their customer statements to each of their customers on a weekly basis, and we'll be working with the SQL Reporting Services report design in terms of the report that we're going to be automating. Requirements for this training session today. We assume that you already have some basic fundamental understanding of the software or have at least gone through and watched the basic email alert training on our website. So the first part of setting up a report is we set up a new job. And today during the training I'm going to kind of, as I'm walking through the slides, I'm also going to flip back and forth between the actual software. So I've got a job set up that we're going to be using as a basis for our training today. And of course when we click the edit button and go in here, we come to the first tab. And when we're on the first general tab of a job, just to kind of cover some of the again, fundamentals of setting up a job, it's always a good idea to put a job description so that we know exactly what this job is going to do. Especially if other people come along and they're picking up your work, it's always good to have some kind of notation about what's going on. In this particular job, we're automating a report and we're going to send it off as an email. So we have to check the email checkbox, and we also have to check the report attachments checkbox to enable those features in the software. Also, since we're going to be sending something off in the email, I always find it a good idea to click the enable test mode. That way we kind of have peace of mind that as we're working with the job and we're testing it and sending stuff out, we don't inadvertently blast out a bunch of emails to people before we're ready to do so. The next tab in the setup process is the input parameters. So in this particular job, we're going to be automating a report, a customer invoice statement, and one of the elements of the statement is what is the date parameter for the report. So what days from Monday to Friday or Monday to Tuesday or just Monday are we going to send out invoices for? And so we have a start and an end date. And for right now, in setting the job up, we're just going to make these hard parameters. So I know that there's invoices that exist in our training data for these date parameters, so I'm going to keep those there. But in a production environment, we would probably turn these date parameters into calculated parameters so that when this is a scheduled job, the dates would automatically calculate relative to today. If I go over to the job and I go to the input screen, if I wanted to make this a calculated parameter, I would actually switch it to calculated. It would bring up the calculation dialog box, and at this point I could put something in there such as the start date, and we could start with the function called now, which would return today's date and time. But if the start date is always 6 days prior to the date that we're going to run it, then I wrap that in another function called date add, and we're going to use D, and then we're going to minus 6 days. And if I preview that, it now brings us back to 4/15, which is relative to today, 6 days ago. Now, if you noticed here also, we have the date in here, or the time, and if I'm passing a time to this particular report, the report doesn't really want a date time. It really just wants a date. So I need to take one extra step, and we're going to do format date, and I'm going to make that a month slash day slash year. And so then if I preview it, it gives me a properly formatted date for this particular report. We have a full list of functions here that you can choose from, and there's an appendix as a PDF file that ships with the software that you can always look for a full list of our functions as well as examples and more details about each function. So in any case, I'm going to cancel that in that jobs and go back into it because I want to bring back the original settings I had in this job. So anyway, so that's setting up parameters. The next screen that we're going to deal with is the distribution logic screen. And as you know from prior training, this is really where we build the core of our business logic. So this is where we're going to ask the question, do any customers have any invoices between the start date and the end date? And it's going to return a list of all of those records. So you can see up here, if I previewed the query that we have in here, it returns 3 customers that have invoices that were generated between the dates that we created over in our business logic. And again, a little bit of review in our software. You can see here where we have actually inserted our 2 parameters into our query so that at runtime it's going to use the values either calculated or input in those parameters to drive this query. You'll also notice here that I used a top 3, and the reason I did that is because if I didn't in the test data, it would actually return back over 100 invoices, and for training and testing, I really don't want to process that many invoices. So I'm going to clear that formatting. So anyway, that is how we set up our business logic, and if it's set up correctly, of course, it's either going to return some records or no records. And in the course of processing the job, if we return back no records, then the job would of course stop and there'd be nothing else to do. But in this case, if we return records back, then we will have something to process in terms of generating reports and emails for each of these records. So the next slide that I want to talk about is job element relationships. So when we set up a job, we've already talked about setting up the we've talked about setting up our parameters, and if we relate that over here to when we get to, I haven't covered it yet, but when we set up the screen for setting up our report, we're going to be using those parameters in the context of the report. We're also going to be using information that comes from our distribution query in the context of the report as well. So in this case, if you look at the screen here on the right for the customer statement, and we've set the report up, this report is expecting 3 parameters. So it's expecting a customer ID, a start date, and an end date. And you can see that we're going to derive our start and end date from our global parameter that we set up, and we're going to derive our customer ID from the list of customers that's been returned from our query to the database. If we go to this screen and we re-review, now we not only do we have our parameters and the query results, and we've got our report tab, we've also got our email tab. So we're going to be using not only our parameters for the report at the global parameters, but we're also going to be using them in our email down here as well. So you can see that these parameters are going to be used in a number of different areas in this particular job. And we're also going to be using various elements of our query in different areas of the job as well. So the email address from the query is going to be used to figure out who we're going to send the email and the report to, and of course we're going to use the customer ID up here when we set up the report. So anyway, I think it's important just to kind of get a visual of when we set up the different elements of a job, how it interrelates and integrates with other areas of the job setup. So with that said, and then ultimately after we generate the report we generate is going to be attached down here, as you can see in the email as well. So with that said, we're going to now, we've set up the general, we've put our general settings, we've put our parameters, we've done our distribution logic. Now we're going to generate the report logic. So in the report logic, the first thing that we have is the report name, which is activity. And I'm going to actually jump back over to the actual job for this. So we have activity, which is just a random name that's unique that we just created for this job in this report. It really doesn't go any further than this grid. And then the type of report. And we've got a lot of different reports here. And we're actually, there's other training sessions that we're going to go through more specifics on each of these different report formats. But for today, in this basic example, we're going to just be dealing with a Microsoft SQL report. And the report path, in this case, since it's a Microsoft SQL report, is the URL to where that report resides out on the network. And I'm going to try and get this correct here so that I can show you. And there it goes. So here's the report. If I take that URL that I put in there, and this is the same report out in SQL Reporting Services. But in any case, we put the URL there. And and just a point on SQL, even though this course is not, we're not putting the full URL, we're just putting everything up to the basically up to the question mark. So everything after the question mark is what we're putting in to our parameter. The next thing that we're going to do is the output file type. So for each report type, in this case SQL Reporting Services, we can vary on what the different opportunities for outputs are. And today we're just going to output the report to a PDF, but you could choose any one of these. And then ultimately, we're going to create a file name for the report that we generate and that we're going to attach into the email. So in this case, we're going to use that field, the file ID, in order to uniquely name this particular report. And then down here, under the parameters for the report, and if you click the refresh button, it actually will go out and derive all the parameters. But then we have to come in here and tell the job which parameter, whether it be a global parameter or a distribution parameter from the distribution line item, that we're going to use for this report. And if we come back here to the PowerPoint, all of these parameters also could be, we could use a merge parameter to determine whatever the value is going to be at runtime. But we've pretty much set the job up at this point. So that's it. So we're going to go process the job. I'm going to leave it in test mode again because I want to make sure that it only goes to me. And I'm going to process the job. And it went out and it processed 3 reports. And if I come over here to my email, here's the report. So we've got, please find your activity between our start and end date. And here's the report that we generated as an attachment. And if I view that, it should bring it up. And there's my report. So exactly what we wanted to do. The next step would be, if everything's working properly, we would go we'd go into the job. We would take it off of test mode. We'd come to the scheduling tab, and we would schedule it to probably run every week, because in this scenario we're going to send out customer statements once a week, and we would do it on, maybe we do it on Friday at the end of each week, and we do it at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. And that's pretty much it. We save the job, and it's scheduled, and it'll go off and do its thing every Friday at 4 p.m. So anyway, oh, and then the next, I guess I forgot to go over this, but I guess before we can send it off, we needed to create the email. And you're probably sitting there going, well, wait, we didn't create the email. So yes, here's the email tab. And as you can see here in the, we've used the parameter, the email in there to derive, who we're going to send it to. We've got our parameter start date and end date here. And so it's going to be a very tailored email specific to this particular customer. And really all of these field elements, no matter what, we could use merge parameters in all of these areas to basically make a very customized email. So with that said, I'm going to erase all that and change the pointer back to an arrow. And that's it. So thank you for the training today. Hopefully that gets you pretty far down the road in automating a report. And if you have some very specific, want some more specific training on an individual report type, please check back to our training session and our training area on our website to look for some training on nuances of each of the specific reports that we can automate. And thank you very much.